Shalom, my friends. Welcome to Weekly Parsha with Yehuda Yisrael. And this week was a milestone that I wanted to share. We hit 613 subscribers. Thank you so much. As you know, that is the number of mitzvot in the Torah, so it's been a very special milestone for me. Thank you for all of my faithful viewers, and here's to growing to many more. Yeah, because we're all about sharing Torah here. So this is Parsha Terumah. And what is interesting about this Parsha is this is where we have descriptive detail regarding the Mishkan. Basically, this is less of a narrative Parsha and more focused on the specifics of the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the traveling tabernacle in the desert. So you have instructions for this, taking gold, silver, and copper, blue, purple, crimson wool. So it's really just a very detailed list of all the things that you use: the oil for lighting, spices for the anointing oil, for the incense, shoham stones for filling, and filling stones for the ephod and the choshen. So the ephod, right? So that's basically vestiges for the kohanim, for the priestly, the priests like Aaron and such, and they'll make a sanctuary and it will dwell in their midst. So this is, God's giving the instructions according to the pattern that I will show you, the pattern of the Mishkan and the pattern of all its vessels, so that you shall do. Yeah. So, and it talks about acacia wood. So I used to go to this rabbi's house for Shabbat, and the Rebbitzin would often take out a would often take out a board for the challah that you put the challah on for the cutting board, and she said, "Oh, this is made of acacia wood," and she'd show how heavy it was and be like, "Imagine this, the Mishkan was made from this. It's really heavy." So yeah, it's a heavy material, acacia wood, and so yeah, you overlay it with pure gold. So it's talking about Bezalel, who will be introduced later. Bezalel was the chief architect of the Mishkan, along with Oholiav. But yeah, Bezalel was from the tribe of Yehuda, and he, as we discussed, will be introduced as the one who basically builds, primarily the chief architect of this Mishkan, the traveling tabernacle. So fine, this is talking about the poles and the sockets and basically the gold and the rings and whatnot to create this Mishkan. So I'll be honest, there's the description of, so yeah, this whole parsha is a description of the Mishkan. So talking about the two golden cheruvim, right? The two angels kind of facing each other, and how they were made. So one cherub on one end of the other, and they'll face the other end, and the ark cover you shall make the cheruvim on its two ends. So that's what it is. I think there was some midrash about a miracle that if the cheruvim would look at each other if things were going well, or sometimes they would turn around the other way if things were not going well for Israel, or based on the spiritual state. Interesting, but yeah, I don't know if it mentions that here. But yeah, this is really just more acacia wood, more gold, more one thing to say, if you were just using this as your guidebook for building this holy structure, one of the holiest, arguably the holiest structure ever created by anyone, aside from maybe the Holy Temple, right? This is the instruction you're given. So the Torah, yes, while it's a great guide for doing this, there's got to be some sort of oral tradition that would, especially when the specifications are so important. There's nothing more important as far as building anything than building, the dwelling place of God, so to speak, right? So then it talks about the table for the showbread. So I think that this parsha really exemplifies the need for the Torah Sheba'al Peh. I mean, if you try to create this on your own in the desert, I don't think that you would probably meet the degree of, needing to be able to do this. So yeah, most of these commentaries give specific, instruction as to how to deal with this ambiguity. It discusses the creating of the menorah, the six-branched menorah with the, the seventh in the middle, the sort of shamish sort of thing. This isn't the menorah from, not to be confused with the Chanukiah, with the eight-branched candelabra with the shamish in the middle, so technically 9. But yeah, this is more of the one that you see, in the temple, because it's obviously modeled off of this, which was in the Torah. So this is just giving the specifications as to how to make the lamps 7, and he shall kindle the lamps and shed light toward the face, and then the tongs, the scooping of the pure gold, and you have different specifications as to how to do that in the commentaries. So yes, and of the Mishkan you shall make 10 curtains consisting of twisted fine linen, and all the colors, and the Kiruvim, and more instruction as to how to do that. Loops, 50 loops on the curtain and the edge of the curtain, and the second set correspond to one another. 50 golden clasps. I mean, look, if you can decipher how to specifically do this according to what God wants without an oral tradition, I'd like to see you try, right? For any of you who think that this Parsha is just crystal clear the way it's described, and you don't need any sort of understanding beyond this, I think that's a pretty brazen and foolish thing to say, but hey, you do you. But thank God, the people who genuinely care about this, the people actually doing this, I'm sure, this is why the inheritors of, those who understand how this was created, the Jews, right? Rabbinic Jews who have plenty of commentaries on this. You see in the Talmud, it's explaining the specifications of how this was done. I mean, this is the tradition that we have. And if you think that this is just a bunch of, rabbis made this up, it has no significance, goodness sakes, I think what happens from like a Christian paradigm a lot of the time is a lot of this stuff becomes irrelevant to learn, because quite frankly, they'll over spiritualize this and say, Jesus is our tabernacle. He tabernacles among us. Like, if you're not getting the idea that, yes, this actual Mishkan existed, and it wasn't some walking Jesus man, and, this was an actual structure that had specifications. And yeah, if you're a Christian and you don't care about any of this, okay, you don't care about the Torah. This isn't for you. But for those who care about this is, we want to talk about foreshadowing. This is foreshadowing of the permanent, ultimate temple that will happen in the days of the Messiah, right? So, we've discussed this ad nauseum. I've had people in my comments say, oh, it's not a real temple. It's just a Jesus thing. You don't get any of that in the Tanakh, I can tell you that. But you do get an elaborate description, 8 chapters long, in Ezekiel chapters 40 through 48, that describe the future third temple during the age of the Messiah in painstaking detail. And it's very reminiscent of this Parsha, in how there are very specific specifications given regarding how to build the Mishkan. And I don't think any of it indicates that Jesus is our tabernacle. So you guys were probably wondering, how could Christians distort this? What could they do with this? Well, they're not going to quote any of these verses specifically, but I would say the way that Christians would try to distort this is basically just look at this Parsha and say, well, this is all a foreshadowing of Jesus tabernacling among us. Like, that's what they would say. Obviously, that's complete shtus, complete hogwash. This is the best they could. Oh, the Holy of Holies, right? Okay, yeah. So this is just speaking about the structure that ultimately we implemented into the design of the first temple. Of course, having the Holy of Holies where the high priest would go into, and on Yom Kippurim and do the sacrifices and whatnot for the other holidays. Throughout doing that on the Mizbeach. So yeah, this is something that is very integral to, maybe not to our, the way that we practice Judaism in the exile, and we'll get to that later when we get to the book of Leviticus as to how it changes based on what God says. But for this is the ideal, right? This is setting the groundwork for when, the future Messiah does come. Many of these structures will come back, and we will be, when the third temple is established in Jerusalem, when the future Messiah comes. Of course, Jesus didn't establish any of that, so one of the infinite number of reasons why Jesus cannot be the Messiah. So yeah, so here's more descriptions if you are interested in learning more about the descriptions of how the Mishkan was designed. That is what this chapter is all about. Sorry, this Parsha, I guess it's chapter 2, but all the implements of the Mishkan, for all its labor and all its pegs and all the pegs of the courtyard shall be copper. So here's what's also interesting. I'll end the video with this. This is something that is very well known by rabbinic Jews who practice, keeping Shabbat. But for those who do not, they might not know about the 39 malachot. Basically, everything that was done to create the Mishkan during, the week, are the basis for what we abstain from on Shabbat, which defines what rest is, right? Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, and basically don't do any work on the Sabbath. The work is defined by the work that they did specifically to build the Mishkan. And since that's forbidden to do on Shabbat, that is the core groundwork that we use in defining what are you allowed to do on Shabbat and what are you not allowed to do on Shabbat. So if you weren't aware of that, the more you know. Of course, if you are a practicing Jew, then you probably already knew that. But anyway, I hope this video has been a blessing to you. Shalom Aleichem. Please subscribe, share, and may Mashiach come bimheira v'yameinu, speedily in our days, and may we celebrate in the future Bayit Shlishi. Shalom Aleichem.